I kind of gave the Marx a bad rap. It's kind of like an elegant simplicity of this transformer. First, it is UL rated, so there's a sticker on the bottom. Second is it's big, beefy, and simple. And the problem I'm having with it is inconsistent voltage, and that's because it had a roller on the end of that arm which rides across the coils to change the voltage, just a big rheostat. So in order to get this off, that little square bar has to slide out through the bottom. In order for it to slide at the bottom, you'd have to bend those tabs and get that transformer off. And then we're going to have to come up with some kind of a roller system for that in order for it to be consistent. But big, beefy, simple. Look at that. How do you beat that? That used to be a pickup wheel that we ground to about maybe a third its normal length and a piece of wire for an axle. And just got to figure out how to put a couple of twists on that so it won't come out, and that'll be a temporary fix, right? Until I can get a new arm. Yeah, that's just an L-shaped piece of wire. I don't know if it's 14 gauge or... And that's a cut down roller off a Lionel pickup. Crimped it. A little bit of glue on there. We'll see if it works. I think it'll be fun to see if this works. Should be fine. Had to isolate it from this right here. So just put an insulator on there, crimped it as hard as I could, and put some glue on there. It should last for what we gotta do. But check out that circuit breaker it's got in there. You know, look at the gauge of the wires on that coil. Gonna Gorilla Glue that thing. Use the wires to pull itself right back in. Alright, let's see whether or not that redneck repair worked. So we got this guy down here on the second track. I think maybe I better put a locomotive on that you can actually see. Alright, this is where phasing comes into play as it goes from one section of the track to the other. So we got to make sure that the transformers are phased properly, otherwise it's going to do exactly that. Alright, so let's take a look at what's going on here with the voltages on the transition from one track to the other. So I got voltage on both tracks. Let's bring it down to like 10 volts. Here's 10, just to verify on top. 10 volts on the whole outside. Now I have the Marx turned up a little bit too, so let's see what we have. So it's also 10. So we have roughly 10 on both tracks. Now we got 10, 10, 10, 9, 3. So we have voltage all the way through here. 10. Alright, you can see this is the one transformer, 10.93. Then we get to the other transformer, it's 10.12. Now, here's the thing we got to pay attention to. Is there any voltage between the two rails? On the outside rails, there is nothing. Look at that. You see how you got 21.08 volts? Wires are in the way, but I'll put them over here. Between these two transformers, you got 21.1 volts here because they're out of phase. Now what that means is, if you understand AC current, you've got a sine wave going up and down, up and down, up and down. And if I rotate the plug on one of those transformers, what will happen is the sine waves will be more in sync right now. I'll draw a picture for you. Okay, now let's see whether or not we have that same difference in voltages. So yet again, let's check the voltages. 10.93, right? 10.93. Let's go over to the Variac. 10.12. Now let's go between the two positives. Before there was 21 volts, now there's 0.8, which is the difference between the 10 points, right? So now those transformers are in phase. And we'll talk about that for a second. So I want you to pay attention to what happened here. Before I rotated the plug, well, you can add it up. There was 10.93 plus 10.1. So it was 20-something volts in between these two. And now there's going to be like 0.8, because that's the difference between the 10.91 and 10.12. It's roughly 0.8, so you would expect there to be a 0.8 difference between the two center rails. Now, why is it when I rotated the plug before that there was 20-something volts between there? And it has to do with the concept of constructive and destructive interference of sine waves. So let me see if I can draw it on a piece of paper. Okay, so I'm going to make a really quick and simplistic video on phasing transformers because I have the opportunity to do so. So, you know, when you get that chance, do it. Now, what I have is I have this Marx transformer we just fixed, and I've got this Variac that we've been using now for a while. Now, the Variac has a 3-prong plug, so it's kind of fixed what it is. The Marx has a 2-prong plug. Now, I'm not going to get into the theory of how transformers work. We're just going to talk about the symptoms. The Variac I have set to 10.15 volts on the upper track. So over here, I should get something similar. 10.12, so very close to the same voltage down at this track right here. This is an isolation track. You can see that from that little spot in the middle. You can either wire it to use the same voltage from one side to the next, or leave it unwired where there's actually a separation in that center rail, right? So that's my isolation. So I'm going to get the Variac voltage on this side, 10 point something, but on the other side I'm going to have another voltage, 10.9. That's because on this track I've got the Marx transformer putting out 10.92 volts. So on this transition track, 10.93, 10.93. When you get to the other side, it's 10.12, because now the power from that point on is being provided by the Variac. So there's a difference in voltage on that center rail from one transformer to the next. You saw that. You know, 10.9, 10.13. So the logical assumption is that the difference in voltage between the one side powered by one transformer and the other is going to be like 0.8, right? You got 0.81, 0.82. That's exactly what you'd expect because those transformers are phased properly. So what you're looking at is the waveform that they're delivering, because this is AC, not DC, is like what's on the bottom. And that means the waves are going up when they're supposed to be going up, and going down when they're supposed to be going down together, so that you're looking at the difference at any point in that set of curves is about the 0.8 difference in the output volts. What happens if I rotate the plug on the Marx is we're going to get something like that, where instead of having the waveform in phase, where both of them are going positive at the same time and negative at the same time, positive at the same time, what's going to happen is they're going to be 180 degrees out of phase, where when one's going positive 10 volts, the other one's going negative 10 volts. And that can create all kinds of issues, as you can probably imagine. And I think what I'll do is just go back and rotate that plug, and let's just see if that whole premise is correct. All right? I'm either full of crap, or when I rotate that plug, we're going to start seeing somewhere around 20 volts, because it'll be the addition of that 10.9, 10.1, because as one goes positive 10 volts, the other one's going negative 10 volts, and you have the difference between the two being 20. So let's test that theory. Just going to go take the plug on the Marx and rotate it. We're not going to get into the theory. Like I said, let's go back to that same test track. And I should get the same voltage, 10.93, and the same 10.1 or 10.2 on the Variac. So that's the Variac at 10.1. And here's the Marx at 10.9. So I'm going to get the addition of those two voltages, if my premise is correct, between those two rails. And there you go. You got 21.03 volts. And that's basically because those waves are 180 degrees out of phase, and the difference between the voltages at the highs and the lows is 20.99 volts. That's called, in the railroad world here, the model railroad world, transformers out of phase. And in my world, it's called constructive interference. So let's go take that plug and rotate it again. and go back and see if we went from the top picture to the bottom picture, and the difference between the voltages of those waves when they're peaking out top and bottom is back to something that is acceptable. So we'll go back and 10.9 just like it was before, 10.13 just like it was before, should be about 0.8 between them, 0.79. So yeah, basically the same. So yet again, rather than get into the theory of it, here's the empirical data that you can think about. And why is that important? Well, when you have multiple transformers, and in particular transformers from different brands, I mean, these two transformers here are not even related in any way, shape, or form. This is basically an industrial Variac for motor controls, and this is an old Marx, not even a Lionel transformer. So the design is absolutely dissimilar. They weren't thinking about trying to have those transformers interact with each other at all. Little details like understanding how to phase them can minimize the problems created by having dissimilar transformers in the same layout. That's why it's important. You know, especially if you have an engine or a train that spans both tracks. So anyway, hope that helps. Yeah, so what I can do now, let's see if I can take one of those locomotives and run it on the inside, bring it out to the outside, and back it back into the inside so I can start running trains from one of the powered loops to the other powered loop. That's the end game here. Here, I'm going to put the E unit so it's doing that. Get around 10 volts. There it goes, nice and smooth. All right, let me see if I can set the switches. Oh. So we're going to set this one to straight, that one to straight, and that one to straight. See if we can turn this train around. So as soon as I get past this switch, I have to turn that one back to curve and then make sure I've got my voltage, I do, on the outside track, and then see if we can get this train turned around. Look at that. All right, let's see if I can back it into the other track. So we've got to make sure that this switch is turned. I still have some voltage on the Marx. That one's straight. And I guess it really doesn't matter what I do with this other track here. Let me just set this one to curved, right? So I'm going to back it that way, then set that switch and come back around and run on the inside. See if we can do that. Okay, did that successfully. So we now have successfully powered both tracks with this similar transformer. It's this Variac, which is absolutely not the recommended approach, but it works pretty good actually. And this old Marx, that's a lot of horsepower right there. And I will show a little bit of a video where we had to go in there and change some things in the Marx, but that thing is a rugged old transformer. The next phase of this is I'm going to come up with a button or something for direction control, and then we can start doing more switching type operations from the outside to the inside, yet again with low cost but high power oddball transformers that nobody would recommend except for a dude like me, right? So all we have to do for doing the reversing on these things is just come up with an interrupt where we can interrupt the voltage for a very short period of time with just a depression of a button. And one of the options I have is just finding a couple of these. I've got one of these. This is actually the old Lionel control systems for the old 1930s transformers, where you have a whistle and, you know, a couple of other things. And two of these would do it, right? But that's not how we roll. I want to find something that you can buy at Lowe's to do it. How's that for a temporary reverser until we get a control panel, and all it does is interrupt the circuit. It's a normally on contact button switch. When you depress it, it breaks the circuit. When you release it reconnects the circuit, and that's perfect for doing a reverse on those old Lionel trains with those E units. So I need to get another one. Experiment worked. We also need to start building a control panel so we can mount the ammeter properly, get an ammeter for this transformer, get a circuit interrupt for this Variac, and a little at a time, one piece at a time. See Farmer Jones down there with his yellow pickup truck. I like that. Gonna start doing some road building too. And at some point we got to get this guy over here, this little happy dude in this gatehouse, to come popping out again like he used to. So lots to do. Also want to get rid of this solid core white cable there, or white wire, and then start replacing it with, you know, braided black colored. It's a softer type of a wire. It looks more like a hang-in wire. We'll get there one piece at a time, and then I have to start getting the shells colored or painted properly for those Pennsylvania railroads like Erie or Erie-Lackawanna or Lehigh Valley. I don't know what it is about these transformers, but both of them let me operate those old goofy Alcos that are very low speed. And I'm liking this more and more once we got the repair done to it. It has a goofy handle because that's not what came stock, but it's very easy to control that locomotive with this. You know, just give a little tiny bit of juice. Look at that. And I've got the accessories powered off of this one right here. It's 14 volts. You know, 1, 2, 3 switches, and we're going to add some more to it, but it doesn't seem to be lacking for power. And I think that's a characteristic I've seen with both of these transformers. They both let you just sort of creep the locomotives at low voltage settings. There you have it. 2 goofy transformers on one goofy layout. Running these old 1960s era Lionel Alcos. The reverser works. We're going to formalize that with a panel. And I'm going to follow the lead of another guy who has this awesome YouTube channel. Is D.A. Griffin, and he basically ran 2 Alco units off of one E unit, and I'm going to do the same with a set of these Texas Specials. I'm probably going to take one of these chassis and then that simple, very basic chassis that doesn't have magnet traction or the MPC, because I can drag it around if it's not totally in sync, but it'll give a little bit of traction, right? That's probably the way it's going to work, is one of these 2 quite powerful MPC era powered A units coupled with one of those. I might buy another one. I see one online for like 40 bucks. And the beauty about them is, since they don't have magnet traction or the traction tires, they don't offer much, but they offer some. And if there's a little bit of dissimilarity between the speeds they want to operate, this guy here can just drag it around no matter which direction those wheels are turning, you know what I'm saying? So if they're turning in the right direction, it adds, you know, a couple percentage points more power. So anyway, but I have to say that this has been, I think, a success. At first I was kind of lukewarm towards it because it had sort of a goofy feel, and that was because it was missing the roller underneath this handle, and of course that's the wrong handle. But once we kind of got that roller that we kind of cobbed up and put in there, not only does it operate very smoothly, but with that big giant coil and rheostat operation, it's pretty easy to develop a controlled start and stop to these older locomotives. And it obviously doesn't have a power deficiency. So I don't know, maybe I get 2 of these and get rid of the Variac. At least they're toy transformers, right?